How angry are all of you at some of these players you drafted? That is one of the things we are going to get into today. We spend all offseason drafting these players, upping our exposures, downing our exposures, trying to get the lay of the land on which players we want in our portfolio. And sometimes by the second quarter of the first week, we're already upset about it. So today, myself, the returning Erik Beimfohr, much like DeAndre Hopkins, are going to hit on these topics. And it's going to be a space for all of us to vent. So I want you to woo-sa, get ready, and let's talk about this together. Erik, I have been doing deep research on the Salem witch trials of 1692, right? Just so you know, you're muted, by the way. And I feel like the last time we did a stream together was in 1692.
I know. I've been away for a little bit of time. Unfortunately, fortunately, it wasn't like DeAndre Hopkins because I didn't get all juiced up on steroids and get kicked off of streams for a few weeks. But I'm excited to be. Well, I guess this is kind of like the doom scrolling of best ball, right? It's like I'm excited to be back, but it's gonna. I'm ready to like rage tilt about like all these players, and it's so fitting that we're having this show after we got to watch another godforsaken Broncos game in prime time, which is just like these like every week, as if somebody else didn't get hurt to tilt me, or just like bad football or whatever, something happening that's tilting me. Then the fantasy gods got to put the cherry on top with another Broncos or Bears or Commanders or whatever primetime game, just to like leave that sour taste in your mouth.
And we're getting Bears Patriots on Monday night this coming week. And it's like, I mean, I live in New England, I'm a Patriots fan, but like, what the hell are we doing? Like this whole flex schedule needs to be upped. Like they need to, after a quarter of the season, let's say after 4 games, you kind of know, right? You can have some surprise teams come from behind, but at that point, like who people want to watch. Nobody wants to watch the Broncos again. Just nobody.
And the surprise teams are usually at least like you could not maybe see it coming like with like an insane run or something, like maybe the Bengals, but there was like reasons to be excited. You're like, like the Bengals last year, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, right? Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd. Like you understand why they would at least be fun to watch. What is the point of someone explained to me the point of being able to flex games when Bills Chiefs is in the afternoon of a week and we can't put it on primetime.
Right.
That also would have been nice for my DFS my DFS play, so I didn't have to decide on eating the Bills Chiefs chalk or not. But it's been a weird, which we'll get into, I'm sure, in a sec. It's been a very weird to me kind of first 6 weeks of the fantasy season. It feels like, I'm sure we say this every year, but it feels different than kind of almost every year. And so maybe that's why like the tilt levels are crazier, because it's like normally like last year, it was like 6 weeks in. Oh shit. I wasn't drafting Derrick Henry. I felt buried, but that tilt was like, I don't know. I could have seen this coming. Like you're an idiot. Yeah. You didn't draft Derrick Henry. He has, 10 million points. It is what it is. This year feels like every week is a new thing. And some of the teams are just so bad. And not just so bad, but so predictably bad in their decision making, like the Broncos, that it's just it just feels so different and more tilting, honestly, because of that.
I think it's got a lot to do with. I think I saw the stat that scoring is down 22%, and I might be a little off on that number, but through the first 6 weeks, it's 22% lower, and it's the lowest it's been in 13 seasons, I think. Jesus. So I think that is, I'm kind of pulling those stats off of Sorry, I can't remember who tweeted it, and it's been a few days since I saw it. So it's one of those things, but it was a tweet that stuck out to me. I'm like, yeah, it feels like we're just not scoring points. Like we haven't had very many like back and forth offensive blowout games this year. Everything feels mundane. I guess that's the word I'll use. This season feels mundane so far.
That's probably the perfect word. And I think it's a little bit because there's kind of like, I keep saying this. I think I stole this from Ben Gretsch or Sean Siegel or somebody, but called it like, it feels like there's just the haves and the have-nots. And that's the mundaneness is because there's only a few haves. The Bills, the Chiefs, the Eagles. That's about it.
Right.
That's about it. We thought this. We almost thought the Seahawks kind of were in that ballpark. The Lions, right? But it's kind of some weird teams that are like fringy. It's really just like the Bills, Chiefs, Eagles. It's like it feels like everybody else is just vying for who's going to make the playoffs and lose to those teams. Like I just don't see anything exciting really about almost any other team. I mean, there's little things here and there, but the haves and the have-nots thing make it so that unless the game is Bills against the Chiefs or Bills against the Eagles or maybe Eagles against somebody at least decent, it's bad. It's bad football. There's no scoring. There's terrible coaching. There's terrible quarterback play. Like people are tilting. I can't remember who it was I was talking to in the Discord yesterday was like tilting their Kyler teams. And I was like, look, I have a lot of Kyler. And I mean, I'm not particularly in love with how it started, but he's like the QB7. And it's like, you're mad at look at how bad Kyler's played and how bad the Cardinals have played. And that's like one of the best quarterback options we have. Yeah, because there's just there's nothing really good going on outside of a couple of teams. So it feels like, man, I mean, this show is perfect because there's just like a million things to tilt outside of, unless you have teams with the Bills, Eagles, and even the Chiefs. I want to bring them up later. They look good like as an offense, but other than Travis Kelce, are you really excited about having any Chiefs on your team? So it's really just kind of like Bills, Eagles, and some sprinkling of other guys mixed in that you're excited about.
And I think like myself and you can actually, before we start tilting, we can victory lap the Eagles because they were a big point of contention in the offseason, right? And you don't see the people that were twerping about like how the Eagles are going to be the run heaviest team. They're not going to pass the ball, blah, 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 blah. And I know for a fact myself and you were like, they're telling us what they want to do with this offense. They don't want to be the run first offense. I mean, it helps that Jalen Hurts looks a million times better this year, but yeah. I mean, I think one of the processes, and we're going to do a show on this in the future, is reading the tea leaves and show the team telling you what they want to be. Teams will tell you what they want to be. It's just, do they have the personnel? And I thought the Eagles had the personnel to do what they were doing. So
100%. You said that, I think, when we did, I don't remember, we did a few different shows where I think we touched on this with the Eagles. And it ended up being where I'm just like above market on every Eagles player. Jalen Hurts, I'm like so just because he just so happened to it was like him and Kyler. I actually had Kyler like in my like rankings or whatever. I had Kyler above him. And then obviously I was really into Lance and stuff. And so Hurts just fell into a so-so exposure to me, which feels really painful right now, but just like smashing AJ Brown, smashing Devonta Smith. Yeah. People didn't like it, but smashing Miles Sanders. And it's not like he's crushing, but like, I mean, would you rather have Miles Sanders or, how many other Miles Sanders in the 9th round or how many other running backs? He looks awesome, particularly on 0 RB teams. He's on like all my best teams. Dallas Goedert. People were worried about target share for Dallas Goedert in a run heavy team. He's one of the best tight ends in fantasy. And so, yeah, the Eagles are one of the only things I'm not. I guess what I will say to spin it to the show, I'm tilting the Eagles because they are obsessed with getting to the 4th quarter and taking the foot off the gas.
They haven't been pushed yet.
They could be blowing away. They could be with the Bills. It could if we were sitting in the show right now and the Eagles gave a shit about blowing teams out, we could be sitting here like, if you don't have the Bills or the Eagles on your teams, you are fucked.
Yeah.
But they just haven't done the Josh Allen thing where it's like, YOLO, dude, we're throwing 50-yard bombs in the fourth quarter up by 30. We don't care. They just want to run and get out of Dodge, which has been good for Miles Sanders, I guess, but their
defense is so good. So
yeah, their defense is awesome. They're just really good. And so I'll be interested to see them kind of over the course of the season and how things go. But those are really the only two teams I would feel particularly awesome about. I feel good about Mahomes and Kelsey, and then Eagles, Bills.
All right, so let's start getting into some of these players that we are tilting. We've each compiled basically a top 5 list of guys that are just tilting our face off for how much we drafted them for one reason or not. And I got to start. I mean, it's injury related, but Javonte Williams is murdering me right now. And here's a guy that was supposed to be on one of these offenses that we were really excited about. I wasn't worried about the timeshare with Melvin Gordon because I just know the league's trending towards these dual backfields. And as long as he got 65%, 60% of the carries, I was happy. And then everything was setting up. Melvin Gordon in the doghouse, potentially getting traded. Javonte starting to look like a workhorse running back. See how angry I am? I can't even talk right now.
Go ahead.
And then it just all falls apart. Like the knee goes, and now we might not even be able to like really feel confident about Javonte Williams again until 2 years from now. And
yeah, it sucks.
It's awful.
It sucks for him. It sucks for fantasy. I have a good buddy that I play in multiple like dynasty leagues with and stuff, and he's been trying. I have Javonte in them. Javonte was like my favorite. Like everybody knows, I've been like talking about Javonte since like last year. I made a stupid, probably drunken tweet where I was like, "Oh, Javonte is going to be the 102 next year," which was obviously hyperbole, but and Melvin came back. Well, otherwise he might have been, a top 5 pick. But it was one of those where all year everyone tells you can't take this guy. You can't take this guy. Didn't you see last year? Didn't you see Melvin Gordon? It's a timeshare. It's a 50-50 split, which is also really disingenuous because everybody drafts Nick Chubb in a timeshare. Everybody drafts Alvin Kamara in a timeshare. It's obviously more nuanced than that, but it became one of those like, Javonte became one of the Gabe Davises and the Kyle Pitts and the guys who haven't quite done it yet that end up being these really polarizing, like meme-worthy draft picks all summer. And then it happened. Melvin Gordon, there's reports that if Javonte hadn't gotten hurt in that one game, they were going to cut Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, it was gone.
It was over. Like they don't even. And then there's quotes today coming out, Hackett saying like, "Yeah, I'm going to have a conversation with Melvin because I don't want it. He's like, I don't want it to be like he doesn't know what's going on or whatever." Which apparently means he didn't know what was going on because Melvin said yesterday after the game that he was like, "I don't know. They just didn't play me. I played 9 snaps. What do you want me to do?"
Yeah, and he said he was like, "I could have helped the team win."
Yeah, and I mean, I do think he could have, to be totally frank. I did draft quite a bit of Melvin Gordon, but anyway, it happened. Everything that everyone said why you could not draft the superstar young 22-year-old running back in what we thought was going to be an amazing high upside offense. It happened. And it happened in that game right before he got hurt on the first play of the second half, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. He took over. Melvin fumbled again in that game, got benched. Javonte played every snap. Literally, he became the CMC of the offense. It happened. The reckoning, the thing that nobody ever thought could happen because Melvin was going to take 50% of the touches. It happened. And then boom, ACL, and it was one of the like a Gus Edwards, type level where he tore multiple ligaments. And so I don't suspect we'll see him until, midway through next year or something like that. And so that one sucks. I think he's the most frustrating one because he's the type of guy I like to target because there's uncertainty. Those are my favorite type play. Really, there's not uncertainty in that Javonte was good. No one ever questioned that. And honestly, there wasn't uncertainty in the Broncos offense. Maybe there should have been uncertainty in that. But the only thing people questioned was like the workload. And those are the kinds of guys I like to bet on, right? Because if Melvin didn't exist, which we're finding out now that Melvin basically didn't exist, he would have been a first-round pick. And you got him in the third round. And so it's frustrating when that doesn't come to fruition, when like that's what everybody told you, you're an idiot for that, and you weren't, but he just gets hurt.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. So who is your first guy you wanted to hit on?
I'm trying to think about the best order to do this. Here's my number one, because he's and it's really nothing about this individual player. This is not in order necessarily of like who I'm most tilted about. But my highest owned running back on both sites is Darrell Henderson. And if you would have told me 6 weeks into the season, Cam Akers was going to quit.
I don't know if it was too quiet, man. He just quit.
He's going to loud quit. He's going to pull an Antonio Brown or whatever. Who was the corner that quit at halftime?
Oh my God.
Jets, Giants, something like that. Anyway, It was once upon a time good, and then wasn't good anymore, and quit. I think it had like left the stadium at halftime. Yeah, which is so baller. I wish I had that much money that I could just do that. But
I wish you would have told every day. Yeah. I'm just like,
you could just walk out in the middle of this show. Like if I got up in the middle of the show, it's just like, fuck you, I'm out of here. But so Darrell Henderson, the thesis was that I don't know why, the Super Bowl champion running back, who's definitely going to have some kind of a role, and obviously has the contingent value if something happens to Cam Akers. Not only did he just like kind of take the job from Vontae Davis, yes, the pride of the University of Illinois, Vontae Davis.
Thanks, GA.
That's great, man. That was so funny. So anyway, if you would have told me we would be sitting here on a show talking about what we're tilting through 6 weeks, and you would say Cam Akers quit the frickin' team on the Super Bowl champs, and you have 40% Darrell Henderson, I would be like, can I like take out a loan on the equity? Because my equity on my best ball teams is an absolute smash right now. Same thing, combine it with the first tilt of Javonte Williams, where you're like, Melvin Gordon is gonna get benched for Latavius Murray, and you combine that with Darrell Henderson. I would think, this is absolute wheels up. It feels like last year when I smashed Darrington Evans and Derrick Henry gets hurt and I don't get to reap any other awards. But this one, it's because the Super Bowl champion offense is horrible. The Rams are horrible. There is no value in that backfield. I mean, he scored a touchdown. Yay. Congratulations. I got my 10 Darrell Henderson points or whatever. But it's so frustrating to, again, kind of like be right about something. Not right, but just like it played out in your favor, right? Cam Akers is not there anymore. And the offensive line is like a bunch of XFL dudes now. They suck. Their offense is terrible. I think when Kyren Williams comes back, he's probably going to end up, getting work, and the Darrell Henderson thesis is totally stone dust. So I'm very tilted about Darrell Henderson.
I understand that, but I do feel like they are a team that they might just make a run like in the next 2 to 3 weeks where we just see them start to progressively get better. So maybe not. Maybe they're just dust. Maybe they put all their eggs in last year and they did what they needed to do. They had to win the Super Bowl, right? Like that was the thesis of the trade. Yep. They did it.
It worked.
And it worked. So like if you're a Rams fan, you can't be upset, but for our best ball stuff, we can be for sure. Yep. So my next one, I'm going to throw a gigantic curveball at you, and I am not going to name a player.
Okay.
I'm going to name a position. Tight ends? What are we doing with this position? Like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, we knew it was going to be bad, but like, how bad can a position be? It is brutal. Like, and we're going to end up having to have a discussion based on the onesie positions going forward about how we attack them, like in future years. I don't know if it'll ever be quite this bad again, though. This is atrocious. There are 2 tight ends in the NFL. 2.
Yeah.
Like
I'm writing articles every week for like the battle royale tournaments, and every time like the best pick is like some tight end that nobody actually really wants to draft because they stink, but it's because literally now the top 2 picks in a battle royale or a snake draft on drafters every week, Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce, because nobody wants any of the other bums. So you have to be like, well, if you don't get Andrews or Kelce, here's maybe a touchdown that you pray to God can score a tight end that can pray to God he scores a touchdown, and that's it. It is so bad. I want to share something on this subject because I was just looking at some of my teams before this, and I think you'll appreciate it. So the big board, remember the big board, the tournament on Underdog? I think I drafted like 10, so 33%. This is 33% on this particular player that I searched for. I think I have like 10, 15 teams or something like that. I'm not doing terrible in the big board. My best team by far in the big board is so bad at tight end. I've only used Kylen Granson's score at tight end through 6 weeks. The rest of the team is just like really good though. It's a freaking Blake Jarwin team. Why did I draft 3 Blake Jarwin teams? I really don't know. I really have no idea. But it is a Kylen Granson. I think it's actually this one on the left-hand side. Trey McBride, who has like 0 fantasy points on the year. Blake Jarwin, who's not even Blake Jarwin and Cam Akers are holding hands, out in the parking lot. And Kylen Granson, I have like 20 total points at tight end on this team, and I drafted 3. I've always been the like, I'm just gonna take 2 because I just hope to hit on the position. Blah blah blah. I even did the take 3 tight ends. My best team has Blake frickin' Jarwin, Trey McBride, and Kylen Granson, because if you don't have Andrews and Kelce, tight end doesn't fucking matter. It absolutely doesn't. It'll matter in the playoffs, but right now it absolutely does not matter. The position is a disaster.
It is brutal. And it's like you go through your teams, even your best teams, and you're looking at that position. If you have a high scoring team that doesn't have Kelce or Andrews, you're just like, oh, it does. That position just basically doesn't matter. But I guarantee like the top, 100 teams and the
all Andrews Kelce
are all Andrews Kelce. I think I have a team at 174 right now, and I don't even know if I have one of the 2 of them on it. It actually blows my mind because it's a Justin Herbert team. Like,
oh wow,
of all, like I have like 4% Herbert. I have all this weight on Lamar and Hurts and Mahomes, like crazy amounts of equity on those guys. And my highest scoring team by far is a Justin Herbert team. And it's like, how is that the team that is the highest scoring team? But yeah, so like just the position as a whole, it is so gross, and it is so painful to have to look at it every week. Like it hurts to look at your best ball teams. It sucks to try to make a DFS lineup. Like just tight end as a whole is the worst. Oh, and by the way, this team that I have my most points for is a 4 tight end build. And I think it's going to be viable going forward because it is a team that I drafted Noah Fant, Evan Ingram, Taysom Hill, and Cameron Brate. Like basically probably the last 4 rounds. It was like this build that I didn't do too much, but like I think we're gonna hold it, but that is gonna be like one of the main strategies going forward. I think in best ball is just punt tight end and draft 3 or 4 of them at the end. Just because who cares? Who cares?
Pray, click and pray with the click and spray and pray at the end of the draft, and take your. I also think the Taysom thing was obviously very unique this year. But I do think it was a miss for me to not, because I was into the like, I didn't do 4, and I'll look at it and think about it next year with the 4, like last 4 picks basically. But I do think it was a miss for me to not be doing 3 late tight end teams with Taysom. I know it's a little bit of he's had 2 or 3 big games so far. Apparently this dude is like the reincarnation, the Mormon Jamal Charles or something. Why does he keep having? Why every game I don't watch the Saints games because they're horrible. Why is he ripping off 60-yard runs every week? Like they didn't have Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, or Chris Olave this week. It's Traquan Smith and Keith Kirkwood on the outside, and you're letting Taysom run for 60 yards on his own read. Like, play some fucking defense. Like,
it's the
what
funniest thing to watch. Because he comes in, it's like, here comes Taysom Hill to run the football, and like teams are just dropping back, and he just got down the field. Like, it's unreal to watch every week. It's like, how are you not seeing what's about to happen? Just, he's gonna do what he does. He does it every week.
When I coached high school football for a few years after I got done playing. And one of my first years, we had like a real, so I went to a school of like 1,200 kids in the suburbs of St. Louis. And so reasonably small school. We had one of the best players in the state of Illinois. He went to Tennessee. He was a four-star recruit, 6'5", like 225, 40-inch vertical, like, could like grab a quarter off the top of the backboard, benched like 320, just a total absolute freak. But he was recruited as a wide receiver. He played wide receiver up until his senior year. We had no one to play quarterback his senior year to throw him the ball, so we played him at quarterback. And and you're in the suburbs of St. Louis, this mutant SEC football player playing quarterback. We just ran zone read, and the dude he never threw it. We just ran the ball with him every single snap. And it was like, how would we score? We would score 30 plus points a game. And it's like, how do we ever score? They should just literally never go towards our running back, tackle this guy. And at least that guy had like a physical advantage where, it was like there was a 200-pound kid trying to tackle him.
Yeah.
Taysom Hill is not, I know he's a good athlete, is not at some crazy advantage over the Bengals defense. Why are they not making him throw or hand the ball off to Mark fucking Ingram? Like, what is so hard about stopping the zone read in modern football? I don't get it. But anyway, back to the tight end thing. I do feel like it was a little bit of a mistake because there was always, like, with how bad the position was, and we kind of knew it was bad. Sprinkle him into those builds, right? Take your, like you said, Cameron Brates, my Kylan Gransons, Trey McBrides, whatever. Those guys, late, Higbees and Jokus, Jonus, take those guys, Isaiah Likely, mix them in with some Taysom, and you can get just enough sprinkled through, just luck box your touchdowns here and there. And then, just honestly, you just pray to God somehow Taysom's playing quarterback then in week 17. And you win, and so I do feel like that was a lesson. And the other thing was Nez saying single elite tight end. My best team, my highest scoring team, which is not really that high scoring, 840 something, in Best Ball Mania, is solo Kelsey, no one else. Now, obviously, I'm going to take a 0 in the bye week, but the way tight ends are scoring, do I give a shit? No, I'm like not like I think Pete Overzet tweeted it today. He was like, shout out to the bye week bros. Thank God they have whatever. Tyler Higbee covered with Cole Kmet this week. Like they, it's like, congratulations, you didn't take the 0. You're going to get 1 point from your tight end position. And it's like, that's how I feel. Like, I think it's kind of this barbell. We talk about barbelling draft season, extreme draft strategies and stuff. And I think I should have drafted more Kelsey, Andrews, and honestly, even Pitts. I know he's been a disappointment, but if you're going to spend a top 3 round pick on the tight end and the position is this bad, what the hell what does Cole Kmet help? What does Kylan Granson help? They don't. It doesn't matter. Take your swings, try to find Ramondre, try to find, Eno and Ken Walker. Find those guys. Those guys win you the $2 million, not salvaging 3 points when Travis Kelce's on a bye.
Unless you think you have a super edge on a guy late, such as Taysom Hill. Right. Like, if you like just a different level of player potential, which we can establish occasionally. We saw it this year clearly with Taysom Hill. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be, I don't know, man. And we're not going to probably see another Taysom Hill per se, but it would have to be like some sort of rookie that that could come out and we're like, well, maybe this guy has a chance to do something. So that was my tight ends that got us off on that tangent. What do you have for your next guy?
All right. Can we talk about both of our guys and definitely your guy? We talked about the haves and the have-nots, and this offense is very much a have. They showed it again on Sunday for a second half against a great defense.
He scored a touchdown.
I know that sucked. That really sucked. That was the cherry on top of stacking Tom Brady against an XFL secondary and him scoring like 10 fantasy points and not being able to complete a freaking pass, and then running. Leonard Fournette ran for like 2 yards a carry and got like 25 carries, and the Bucs lost to the Steelers, and I stacked the Bucs like a total donkey. But then we get to the afternoon, and yes, MVS scored a touchdown. We got robbed, but he's been kind of everything we hoped.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just not getting. Mahomes missed him, if you remember, against the Colts. He ran kind of a double move, and it was the typical 75-yard play you draft MVS for. And everybody that hated on Tyreek and the Tua thing, like, oh, Tua can't throw downfield to Tyreek. Tyreek's hitting big plays every single week, no matter who's back there at quarterback. Tua, Skylar Thompson, Teddy Bridgewater, doesn't matter.
Right.
Mahomes is missing MVS and these guys on deep throws. MVS had his one big play a couple weeks ago against the Colts, and then had another touchdown this week that he should have scored, and we're just not getting it. And then 2 weeks ago, we get the volume. We get 6-7 for 90 or whatever it was, almost 100 yards. Just don't get the bonus. It's frustrating because it feels like he was such a good pick. He's playing every snap with Patrick Mahomes, has gotten some big play shots. Mahomes is throwing a zillion touchdowns. Everything is going like you planned. Hardman is just the gadgety Hardman. Skyy is not the threat so far to him. He's the guy out there, and he's still MVS. He's getting open down the field, occasionally, and he's getting a little more volume outside of this past week than we expected. And it's just, give me the fucking fantasy points.
Yeah.
The Sclansky Bucks are not helping. I want the fantasy points that we're supposed to get when we have this role on the Chiefs.
Yeah, it feels like they're targeting wide receivers, but then their tight ends have every single touchdown, whether
all
it's
of them, and
Travis
CEH.
Kelce or Jordy Fortson or Noah Gray and CEH and Jerick McKinnon. And I mean, Juju got one on Sunday, which was great. But I had Mahomes double stacked with MVS and Juju, and I was like, all right, got the Juju touchdown. Let's get this MVS one. And then I was in first place in the afternoon only slate, and I was like, let's just make sure I mush myself. And I threw the team in the Discord, and as soon as I did that, down.
Diggs scored, I think. Yeah.
Gabe scored because I had Diggs, and I didn't have Gabe because I couldn't make it work. So I went Singletary, Diggs as my two. Who Singletary's looking quite nice this year.
Not tilting the Devin Singletary shares.
Nope.
Zach Moss inactive on Sunday. Feeling really good about Devin Singletary for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but with MVS, I'm like, it's coming. Like, it still feels like it's coming though. It sucks, and it's just like, come on.
It's tilting. I don't feel like him about like Javonte. Right, Javonte's obviously dead. Trey Lance is dead. The Broncos just feel totally, absolutely stone cold dead. And I don't feel like that about MVS, but it's tilting the shit out of me because when you draft 30% of this guy, I just want like, just give me one or two of these big games. And he's had like 2 kind of usable ish weeks, but nothing to write home about.
But he's going to crush it in week 17. That's the thesis of the play. And, just to show you how much we care about week 17, hopefully I can do this.
Oh God. Yes. If you haven't seen the new, I can post a link in the, one of us will post a link in the chat. If you haven't seen the new week 17 shirts to go with the incredible music video that Rob and co put together for the week 17 shanty, we have t-shirts for you too. I need to order one, by the way.
We have 2 versions too. I put one with the schedule, which Blundell crushed it with the graphics on it.
So good.
And then we have like the evergreen one where it's just, week 17 because it's going to be the thing every year. Week 17 is the year and is the week. And MVS is just as viable still as any of those other players because we know he still has it in him. It's not like we watched him and we're like, oh, he's completely washed, right? Like we're like,
Yeah,
there's potential there, but
he's the same player.
now, it sucks.
He's the same. It's like he's like a shittier version of Gabe. He's out there. He's going to make some big plays, but he's going to be out there.
Mhm.
That's all you just are hoping for the big plays, and he's gotten open a few times. It just hasn't worked. Can we talk really quickly and double back to this Tigers comment that
I saw that? Yeah,
he's in 13th in BBM with Mike Gesicki and Hayden Hurst. This team has to be absolutely freaking. I know they've probably ping-ponged weeks well enough. I mean, Gesicki just had his big game this week and Hayden Hurst 2 weeks ago, and it's probably worked out well enough. But even then, the first couple of weeks were probably not awesome at tight end, especially given what Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce were doing. So, man, you had to just absolutely have crushed this team. Shout out to you. Good luck. Like, yeah,
man, you're in team in the chat so that we can just kind of see.
You're very live because if you're in 13th without some of the what I would expect to be by far the chalkiest players, and you're loaded at running back, wide receiver, probably have Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts or something at quarterback, like you're a legit live. Like I would be very excited about this team if I were you.
Do you think that, so just guessing, this is one of the, maybe he has one of those McCaffrey round 2 someone and then maybe Saquon in the third? Or at least McCaffrey, Saquon in the second?
Saquon makes sense. I was going to say one of the first round wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Kupp.
Yeah, Kupp would make sense.
Probably Kupp because Jefferson's had a couple of big spikes, but Kupp is just every fucking week, dude. It literally doesn't matter. Just pencil in 12 points minimum. Like the floor is 12. And the floor is usually like 20.
Every week I see him, it's just how is he this wide open all the time in the NFL? Like he doesn't it's funny because he doesn't particularly look great at anything after he catches the ball. Like he's great. Like he's a great player, but he just doesn't I don't know. He just must be the best route runner in the history of the NFL right now.
This is what I was going to say, by the way. GA says Tyreek. Tyreek has been awesome. He had about 1 or 2 down weeks. He got hurt the 1 week and then had maybe a down week when Tua got hurt or something like that. 1 or 2. But, I mean, my God, he had the 50 spot or whatever it was the 1 week, and he's crushing. AJ Brown is crushing. I'm trying to think. But Saquon has been awesome. Chubb has been really good. So there's probably a few different combinations you could get, but Kupp is the reason when you draft Jamar Chase that you're mad, because you're like, the Bengals offense has its flaws, but speaking of tilt, keeping this subject alive, how does Jamar Chase not score like 15 fantasy points every single week? The Rams can't protect Stafford for more than like 2.5 seconds, and everyone and Allen Robinson can't get open, and they don't have a third wide receiver. It's Ben Skoranek. Ben Skoranek couldn't get open in the Big Ten, and he's out there as the third wide receiver. He went to Northwestern, dude. Like this dude is the definition of a jag. I actually don't know how he's in the NFL.
Shout out to Northwestern.
Yes, shout out to Northwestern. He's also he's probably very smart. So good for him. That's probably why McVay likes him. Also, that I was going to say something inappropriate. I'm glad I didn't say it. Kupp, McVay just like knows how to get Kupp the ball, and Stafford gets Kupp the ball. Right? It's like the whole defense. Allen Robinson can't get open. The whole Tyler Higbee is just like a check down artist. He's a glorified check down running back at tight end. When all else fails, because A-Rob can't get open, and God forbid Ben Skoranek can't get open, it's like, let's check it down to Tyler Higbee. They just get Kupp the ball. It's the only way they can compete in games, and the defense knows it. Like the NFL teams know how good Cooper Kupp is, and he catches 10 balls every week. and he scores touchdowns every week. And why would there ever be a scenario in which Jamar Chase doesn't do the same thing? Or Justin Jefferson's getting closer. He has had 1 or 2 weeks where you're like, what the fuck, man? What 4 targets against the Lions? Like, what are we doing here? But Kupp is the reason why you get tilted about like every other's. Why do you get tilted about? He's not on my list of tilt players, but because tight end's so bad. But like when you draft 25% Kyle Pitts, why are you tilted about his lack of production? You watch Cooper Kupp and you watch an offense just get the ball to their best players, no matter what. Defense doesn't matter. Nothing matters. They get the ball to Cooper Kupp, and Kyle Pitts is out here getting 3 targets.
Well, we knew with the Bengals that my biggest fear was just the way they were going to play offensively this year, because we saw what they did in games that they weren't pushed last year. They play a very specific way, and this is part of scoring being down. Nobody has like pushed the Bengals really this year to play explosively, right? So they don't. And then they play these like little games where they're, sort of in them. So they're still running, mixing a ton. They're not firing the ball downfield. Like, they're tough to watch. And it was my biggest fear with the Bengals. And we were drafting 3 Bengals in the top 2 rounds, according to ADP. And I think we even said it at one point, like, this offense is not going to sustain 3 top 24 picks. It's just not built for that. So you need to pick the 1 or maybe the 2 that you think it's going to be. For me, it was Chase. Like, it was a clear cut, obvious. He's just better than the other 2 players. And then you just get into that whole argument of that back first round. Do you take Mixon? No, you took Kelsey. Kelsey was the answer to the end of the first round. Kelsey, 100%. Saquon, because he was right.
Diggs, Kelsey, Saquon, Devontae, in whatever order you would prefer. Kelsey probably first because of tight end, like you said. Kelsey, Diggs, Saquon, Devontae for sure is like, there's really no questioning it. Once you got past, I know that CMC hasn't done it and JT got dinged up and hasn't really done it either, but I don't really have any, it's revisionist history if people want to go back and say like, oh, you're an idiot for drafting JT or CMC. No one was saying that. So we're not even gonna talk about that. But besides those 2 guys and the big 3 wide receivers, Eckler's been we had a couple of 2 good games basically, and a bunch of other trash. Yep. Which is what I wasn't drafting. I don't have any Eckler.
No, we were pushing Diggs to 6. I think both of us were.
Kelsey, Diggs, Devontae was what I was taking after the top 5. That's what the Spike Week rankings were. That's one of the things that I feel honestly best about. It's probably what's helping me the most this year was the top 5 was so locked in for me with those big 3 wide receivers and the top 2 running backs. It is what it is with your JT and CMC teams. I don't regret those.
I think CMC's 3rd in scoring it for running back still.
Yeah, he's still grinding out, just like you're not dead, basically. Right. You're not happy, but he's doing just enough to where like you're like, please God, like just let the team around him be good enough that I can get through to the playoffs with him. He'll probably be fairly low owned in the playoffs. But I think after the top 5, it was just, did you go to the Ecklers, Henrys, and Derrick Henry's been okay. But Henry's, Mixon's, Najee, shout out to Felix in the I know he's in the chat. Did you go to Najee has been really brutal. I know he scored a touchdown this week, but
Felix, we're really happy you won $1 million last year. Yeah, because you're going to need it after this year.
I think we had that conversation at a certain point this offseason where it was like, you're really pushing this. You won $1 million, and now you're going to draft 90% Najee. Like, I feel like this is not going to be your year. And turns out Najee.
Watch him bank it. Watch him bank another one with one of the teams that he didn't get Najee, and he just slithers it through to the finals, and then I can never talk to him again because I'm not a millionaire and he is twice.
We're gonna delete the whole channel if that happens. But yeah, non-tilt is, I think, the first round was honestly the first 2 rounds. Round 3, we start to get into Kyle Pitts territory and DJ Moore territory and Broncos wide receiver territory. It gets a little sketchy, but I feel really good about the first 2 rounds being that top 5 was a lock, and then getting to Diggs, Kelsey, Devontae, Saquon, Tyreek, AJ Brown, right? Even Debo, even Debo's been okay. Feel really good about that. So
Tigers posted some of his team, and it's an Allen double stack with Diggs and Gabe, but he also has Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Amon-Ra, Olave. Like those are some of the players he has on this team with those tight ends. And it's like you look at it and like, yeah, you could get this team easily. You could easily get this team. I wasn't on Olave because I just didn't like the Saints offense to begin with, but
fucking L. What an L that is. Olave being on like a bunch of other, and the other rookie wide receivers have been great.
Yep.
Right. Garrett Wilson, London, etc. But I wasn't really on Olave, just a sprinkle here and there. And that feels bad. This team is awesome.
I got to show you this, Erik, just because we have to do something dog related on every stream. But this is what I deal with right here.
That is literally an everyday occurrence also for my dogs. Why do they lay like? Would they look at me weird if I laid like that? Probably.
Right.
So like, why are you doing? What is it with the laying on the back? Full spread eagle with the dogs. I don't get it.
It's unreal. All right, let's get back to this. I think it's my turn. And Erik, I host a show about ghosts, right? And we talk about the theories of if ghosts are real or not, like how they could be. I am about to prove that ghosts are real in accordance to football, because where the hell's William Fuller? Right?
I didn't even think about him. That is a great one.
And I'm just sitting here. I'm like, all right, he's got to sign with a team soon. Right? Like, and not only is he not signed with a team, I don't know if he's a real person or if he's dead. So he must be a ghost, because who the hell has seen nobody has even said that they've seen William Fuller in the last year. Where is he? Go make money. You're like 12 years old or something, and you have like a small window to make money playing football. Go make money. What are you doing? Can you please go play? Me and Overzet especially are begging you to play, because our big dog team is in first place right now in our grouping. And if we could get William Fuller on that team, that would be phenomenal. And somehow we're in first place with Everett and Gesicki as our tight ends.
I'm telling you, if you hit the nuts around the tight end, it just like really doesn't matter. I was trying to pull up a picture of like a guy chilling on an island or something like that, and that was Will Fuller. But I don't know, man. I part of me does like quasi respect it. He's been hurt a lot, and maybe he just doesn't want to play football. And if you made a bunch of money and that's how you feel, so be it. But like, it is bizarro world that in 2022, right? Tom Brady can't have marital problems without it coming out. Before, right? It came out well before.
Yep.
Rumors did. The moment Robbie Anderson beefs with his coach, we know he's getting traded. Everything comes out so fast. We know what these athletes eat for lunch every single day. And I don't know a person who knows where the fuck Will Fuller even is right now.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to me. I can't figure it out. It's probably the most confusing thing of the entire NFL season. Honestly, other him and the Space Jam. They took Russell Wilson's. They took Russell Wilson's football playing ability away, like it's friggin' Space Jam, and he's Muggsy Bogues. I don't know what's going on with Will Fuller, and it's crazy.
Like, do we think that he's just become? I'm trying to remember the guy who Leonardo DiCaprio played in The Aviator. Like, he ended up just becoming like this recluse that couldn't leave his house because he was like, he went crazy basically.
Yes,
but. Is that what's going on with William Fuller? Is he just like looking out his blinds every 15 minutes. Like, I hope no one comes and asks me to play football. Like, I'm going to stay in this house. And he just has
got a
like
beard
15
and
walks.
yeah.
Yeah, he looks like he should be in the Lord of the Rings show or something. Just got this hood and this long beard, and he's out there casting spells and just checking on the neighborhood. And yeah, where is William Fuller? Somebody tell me. And while we're on it, I need to tilt this goddamn team that we're in first place in it. And I look at this team and I get angry. We drafted Jalen Hurts. Can you tell me why me and Pete decided to draft Ryan Tannehill and Zach Wilson after drafting Jalen Hurts? Like,
On
the hell
stream,
were we? Yeah, I got to go back and watch like what the thesis of that play was. We're just crushing it with running backs is all. We have Fournette, Breece Hall, Ramondre, Josh Jacobs, and Kenneth Walker. So like that's why we're crushing.
Yeah, as DY says, Breece is absolutely crushing, and that has to be one of the best running back rooms you can have, right? Fournette, Breece, Ramondre, Jacobs,
and Kenneth Walker.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
that
crush.
team is silly.
Yeah, and then like our wide receivers, not to like gloat about our teams, but we have CeeDee, AJ Brown, Judy, MVS, Burks, Hardman, Pierce, and William Fuller. For some reason.
Yeah, I guess you took this will pivot into one of my tilting players, and it's tilting because he's crushing and he's on that team, and it is Sir Josh Jacobs. What the fuck, man? What just happened? What just happened with Josh Jacobs? The whole thing all offseason. Josh McDaniels is in town. He's bringing the Patriots, right? He's bringing the committee backfield. They didn't. You talked about at the beginning with the Eagles, a team telling you what they want to do, right? Like it was more so pass, run, or whatever. They didn't re-up Josh Jacobs. They didn't sign his 5th-year option. So you're like, well, okay, that's a bad sign. It's probably not a very good new regime. Doesn't and those are like fairly cheap options for a guy like Josh Jacobs. So they're not interested in bringing him back, at least not yet. They draft Zamir White. They bring in Brandon Bolden and Amir Abdullah, and they all make the team.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Jacobs plays in the Hall of Fame game with like all the slapdick backups, right? Yep. It's like everybody is resting. All the competent players. Mac Hollins didn't. Keelan Cole. It's him and Keelan Cole out there. Yep. No. So you're like, okay, this is terrible for Josh Jacobs. I'm smashing Zamir White in drafts. All of a sudden, Josh Jacobs is the second coming of whatever, Bo Jackson in the backfield. He has almost 300 yards rushing in the last 2 games, 70 receive. He's borderline 400 total yards in the last 2 games. He's playing all the snaps. Brandon Bolden is mixing in a little bit, but it's really just Josh Jacobs' backfield in an offense that, the team has not been great. They haven't won a lot of games. The Raiders. But like, we're not really worried about their offense, like with the Broncos. The Broncos are like being competitive in these games, but they're like the worst. It's like watching a Bears game. They're awful. The Raiders are not winning a ton, but the offense is not something we are worried about. And this dude looks awesome. He looks every bit the first round running back that they probably drafted him to be. And so I am tilting my face off with like almost no Josh Jacobs and a lot of Zamir White, as Josh Jacobs looks like. And I probably should have not seen this coming, but should have thought about this more, where it's like, look, I'm a 0 RB bro, right? I'm drafting a lot of Miles Sanders. I'm drafting a lot of Ramondre, Damian Harris, those kind of guys. Mm-hmm. I need to mix in Josh Jacobs because this type of outcome, an outcome where he's usable all year, is very much in the range, and an outcome where he smashes is, of course, in the range of outcomes. And I just was trying to read all those tea leaves and went probably a little bit overboard. And 8th round Josh Jacobs is just an absolute smash, and it tilts me every time he's going to run for 100 yards again this week. They play the Texans, and it's going to suck.
Look, I don't have a ton of Jacobs, and it's not like me and Overzet were rocket scientists on that team. He dropped 40 to 50 picks past ADP that stream, and that's why we got Josh Jacobs. We were like, well, we have to now. Like, we have. It's why we took Mike Gesicki. He went 3 rounds past ADP. We're like, well, we have to take Mike Gesicki now because he's there. Sometimes that stuff happens, and those are some of the benefits you get in the live streams where nobody wants to be the guy to draft Josh Jacobs.
Yep.
So he just falls and falls and falls and falls. And then at some point it's like, guys, like somebody's got to take him. So might as well be us. And you still don't feel particularly great about it, but you're like,
No.
If he's 40 to 50 picks past ADP, we got to do it. So yeah, I mean, that goes into my Zamir White, which was the guy that I listed. So it's like literally the same spiel. But Zamir White is just a name for like a bunch of guys, right? It's the rookie running back and on the Chargers that we thought was going to smash. Who I can't remember. Yeah, Spiller. Like insert player X here, and you're just
Tyrion Davis Price,
right?
All those guys. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, but we're going to do that every year because of the upside. Like you're going to be taking your shots on these guys in the 14th to 18th round, because if you hit, that's an absolute smash. If you took Dameon Pierce in the 18th round in the early drafts, like you feel phenomenal right now, right? And Zamir White was the same thesis at the time for the most part, like
100%,
right?
On a better offense.
So that's, I mean, every year that we do this, we're gonna have a Zamir White, right? And it's so we can just insert that name with anybody. Is there anyone else you particularly wanted to hit on in this?
I'm trying to look at my list.
I have Kyler. We already talked about him a little bit.
Can we talk about Skyy Moore?
We can talk about Skyy Moore.
You're heavy on the Chiefs. I don't know how much Skyy Moore you have. I don't have a ton of Skyy Moore. I'm just looking at it right now, like 15%.
I think 12 to 14%, something like that.
Skyy Moore,
mm-hmm.
And he's got to be one of the best examples of, we got excited. Everybody did, me, everybody, about the prospect, but we're talking about a small school.
Mm-hmm.
I know he was early declare. I know he was productive, blah, blah, blah. We're talking about a small school player drafted after a lot of other wide receivers. And because we could squint and tell ourselves a story about the profile, right? He checks a couple boxes. There's some good production in the freaking MAC where everybody scores a bunch of points. I mean, I understand like how people kind of evaluate their prospects, and I respect it. And I'm not a total prospect guru, so I absolutely listen to other people's opinions. But go watch MAC football and tell me that like there isn't some guys putting up some numbers in the MAC that are not NFL football players. I'm not saying Skyy isn't. I actually am still a little bit bullish for Skyy the rest of the way. But I think you wanted to see a little more than this, given what their wide receiver room is doing. Juju, I know he just had the good game, but it was kind of one catch where a guy, Juju looks like he reminds me of Gerald Everett. I don't know why. Maybe it's a single digit. Oh. He looks like a tight end. He looks like a tight end out there, like an athletic tight end, but a tight end nonetheless. But he's playing wide receiver. Juju looks like dust to me. There's no juice with Juju. MVS is just MVS, which is fine.
Yep.
McCole is McCole.
Yep.
They need help. And Skyy still can't really carve out a role. And I feel like it's one of those where, the Leone, we jumped the shark. He went ahead of Chris Olave. He's going ahead of Garrett Wilson. He's going ahead of a lot of guys. And I get it. I'm a sucker for the upside and stuff too. And I drafted plenty of him. But I feel like maybe his ADP was just a little bit out of balance because of the landing spot, which is the hardest thing for me to kind of figure out, is like, because I want guys on the Chiefs. And the wide receiver room was wide open. Who knows? Maybe he could have started day one. But I think we're seeing the flaws in the small school second round wide receiver from Western Michigan and taking him in the 8th round just because he's on the Chiefs. I think we're seeing the flaws in that.
Yeah, I mean, and I wasn't big on Skyy Moore, but I have a lot of Skyy Moore just by proxy of having a ton of Patrick Mahomes. So like trying to get those double stacks and everything, it's like he was one of the easier ones to double stack. So yeah, I'm double the field on him, but I didn't love Skyy Moore. I mean, I made a video making fun of Skyy Moore, like calling him Slant Boy too, because I watched his highlight reel, and the first 7 plays of his highlight reel is just running a slant all over the middle of the field. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that could be fine. Like, he's going to house 1 or 2 of those maybe this year. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't big on Skyy Moore. I have a player we should end this with, unless you have something else afterwards. But
I think I'm good.
I think the player to end this with is a guy that I was already uncomfortable with in the offseason based on where he was being drafted. And it's CeeDee Lamb. He's not having a particularly awful year, but he's not having a great year either. And it's like, and he's exactly what I thought he was is the thing. Like, he's exactly what I thought he was going to be. He was going to be fine. Like, 3rd round CeeDee Lamb would be great, but we had to draft him tail end of the 1st, early 2nd. And it never, I don't know about for you, but I never liked it. Like, it was like a grit my teeth. And I think we even had a stream where I was 100 drafts in and I hadn't drafted CeeDee Lamb at all. And I corrected it to get more of him. Like, it was I actively went and got more CeeDee Lamb, but I subconsciously knew I didn't like where he was getting drafted. And I guess like my overall point on this is, do we just lean into those a little bit more going forward? And if like, I don't like CeeDee Lamb at the end of the 1st, early 2nd, do I just fade, or am I going to have to accept the fact that like, maybe I still need CeeDee in the playoffs and I have to get some CeeDee teams? Right. So like it's something I have to ponder a little bit more. I don't have an answer at the moment for it, but I mean, I think if you have CeeDee Lamb, you're not fully frustrated, but you're kind of frustrated, and you don't feel like there's a high upside going forward. Kind of. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I like that you brought him up because he wasn't someone that I thought about, because he's, like you said, he's been fine, or what, generally speaking, definitely not the smash of the first 2 rounds, but he was the guy that we just, because after all those top guys, like we mentioned, right, we talked about earlier, you get past the Diggs, Javonte, Kelsey, whatever, we got to take someone. And it's like, everybody likes CeeDee as a player. He has all the target upside in the world. Now, Dak has been out, so we'll see over these next couple weeks, but he wasn't particularly good before Dak got hurt anyway. Mm-hmm. He is an interesting kind of thought experiment where everybody drops in a player into this kind of dead zone of the early rounds and then pushes back. So like some people in the GA even mentioned, again, like Tyreek, right? Tyreek is Fritzy Boy says Tyreek's on pace to break the single season receiving record. Why exactly were we down on Tyreek at the 2-3 turn?
Yeah,
but CeeDee never budged from the 1-2.
Never moved. Like, stayed. And I liked all those wide receivers more than I like CeeDee Lamb. I liked Evans and I liked Hill.
Tyreek is better. Tyreek is a better football player than CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
And we were and because Tua can't throw the ball 80 yards, we weren't gonna, like, we couldn't take him, but we can take CeeDee in like kind of a questionable offense. Noah Brown is the wide receiver too. Like, offensive line's getting worse. I have like my share of CeeDee because I did the same thing. It was like, what do you do? What do you do after all those guys are gone? I don't want to take Joe Mixon. And I feel fine about not taking Joe Mixon. I feel fine if I took CeeDee over Joe Mixon. But the other wide receivers are probably better football players than CeeDee Lamb at this point. CeeDee's good. I like CeeDee. I'm bullish about him for the future. A.J. Brown is better at football than CeeDee Lamb is. Yep. Tyreek Hill is better at football than CeeDee Lamb is. Deebo Samuel is better at football than CeeDee Lamb is. Mark Andrews is better at football than CeeDee Lamb is. There were all those guys that we could have, Saquon Barkley, we could have taken right there. And we just, like, the infatuation with CeeDee put him in this spot where it's just going to be so hard to win with him because of what you sacrificed. Even if he is better moving forward, what you sacrificed to take him over Tyreek, Mark Andrews, Saquon, AJ Brown, etc., it's going to be hard. And so he's a good lesson, I think. I don't have like a really firm takeaway yet, but I'm glad you brought him up because he was a very unique use case this year that I don't think, and it's like, you're not, like you said, you're not mad that you have him, but you're probably not winning your league either with CeeDee.
And just looking at his stats, right? He hasn't broken 100 yards yet this year. Now, me and you are doing a DFS show together on Sunday.
Nice.
Not even sure if you knew that, but yeah, I think we're doing the show together on this Sunday morning. He's playing Detroit at home. He's probably going to be one of my, locks. Just, I haven't gone through everything, but
going to break 100 yards this week.
yeah. CeeDee at home against Detroit. Yeah. I mean, lock it up. He's going to get the 100.
Dak's back.
Yeah. He's going to crush. But his targets have been crazy. 11, 11, 12, 8, 8, 10. And he's double digits every week in PPR scoring, other than week 1 where, he got crushed from Tampa. But he still had 11 targets that game. It's just, it becomes like this whole thing where you're just like, I just don't know. It doesn't feel good. And it didn't feel good drafting him. I was reading this comment from Craig too. And I kind of have this theory going forward, not specifically in relation to CeeDee Lamb. My dog is actually going to go crazy tonight.
I love this. I'm watching. I'm sorry, Craig. I read your comment. I appreciate you, but apologies if I'm distracted.
So I was looking at some of my teams, and I have like 4% say Najee, and like 3%. I don't even know. Just some of the guys that I just didn't really like in the first round. Derrick Henry, and I'm not even like a Derrick Henry hater, like a lot of people that we converse with. But like, if I'm down enough that I don't even want to get even to the field on these guys or close to it, why don't I just up my bags on Stephon Diggs or, Travis Kelce or Saquon Barkley or like guys in that wheelhouse? I'm just going off the ADP from the preseason, like before the season started. Like, why don't we just, and you know how I am, I'm a lean into players guy. So why wasn't I leaning fully in this spot? And I think I edged more towards that every year. So that is a point that I want to remember next year. CeeDee, I don't know if he really falls into that so much because I really have, it's a guy, if the spot comes up again next year, I'm going to have to look at it and be like, oh, this is a CeeDee spot. And that might be a thing that I think of for the rest of my life. Like, oh, this is the CeeDee Lamb spot.
Yeah.
Right. And how do I feel about this player? And I think I have to make a decision. Do I like him? Do I not like him? Should I draft him or not draft him? And that's where we got to go with that.
I like this. Good way to wrap up. I was just going to show, I think we talked about this on a show several, maybe even a couple of months ago now, but I feel the exact same way of what Craig said and what you said. And I pulled up just my BBM exposure specifically. And it was exactly, so I was out on Eckler. I was out on Derrick Henry. You do see I did end with 0 Dalvin. I was out on Najee. I was out on Mixon. I was out on Kamara. And it's like, did I take a lot of them? No. Are there maybe a couple auto drafts here and there? Sure. But getting a cumulative 10, 15% or whatever exposure to those players who I literally don't want, because as you see with rankings here, Jamar Chase is my 5. He ended up as the 6 overall in ADP. So I should be a little higher than him on him. I am, right? I'm way lower on Derrick Henry, ranking 15 versus 7. Dalvin, 7 versus 8, right? Diggs is higher. Devontae's higher. Kelsey's higher. So I should just be getting, like, I can appreciate people wanting to diversify a little bit, but I'm already, like, I'm not going to be having some 40% stand on a first round player because it's just not possible, right? Because I'm going to get my requisite 11% JT, 7% CMC, right? I'm going to get my 10 to 15% of all those top 5 guys. Let's turn this Diggs number from 14 to 18. Let's turn this Devontae number from 16 or from 12 to 16, right? Kelsey's 12 to 15. Let's just ramp that up, as opposed to, what is the point of this? Like, if Najee is the guy, you weren't going to win anyway. You have 4 Najee teams or whatever. Like, who cares? You weren't going to win. So just that is definitely to wrap up the tilt thing. I'm tilted that I took any of those guys. Like, look, if I lost to Najee, our good friend Felix can win, and good for him. He can be a multimillionaire. He can be we lose and we move on to the next year. But I wish those not right. It sounds like nothing, but it's like when the thesis of those wide receivers, tight ends, etc., were right, and you can pivot a cumulative 25 teams or whatever to those other guys, it makes a huge difference in the amount of bullets you have that are live, right? Those Najee teams, take those 5 Najee teams, those 5 Eckler teams, those 5 Mixon teams, whatever, move them to Kelsey. How much better do you feel right now?
Right.
Pretty freaking awesome. You would feel a lot better. And so, I'm tilted that I didn't just make that little minor tweak, because it was something I probably should have seen ahead of time.
Yeah, if we're shooting at a target, right? I'd rather have 30 Kelsey bullets instead of 25 with 5 Najee bullets, right?
Exactly.
I'd rather just have the extra 5 Kelsey teams, like, because now you're saying you have to be perfect on these Najee teams, right? Like, if he is the guy that you need, you still need to be perfect around him. And you've already made the decision that you're not building these teams around Najee. You're building them around these other players. So let's just build extra teams around Travis Kelsey, around Saquon Barkley, around, Stephon Diggs, for sure, who we were both grabbing early. Like, just give me those targets. And spoiler alert, people dragged Christian McCaffrey teams to the playoffs last year. So you can still do it with these guys that, even if you miss, you can still min cash. Like, no one wants to min cash, but it's still viable that you can get these teams to a cashing level, right? So I just would rather have the bullets on some of the other guys that I believe in a little bit more. But CeeDee's like in that middle. Like, he's such a middle guy where you're like, it's almost like flipping a coin, but I didn't feel good about him and I leaned not feeling good. So maybe that's what I need to figure out. So is he a guy that we should have 4% on? Right?
Right.
Like, or do we just fake?
Or is he Dalvin Cook?
Right. And that's where I gotta like figure out, man. Like, it's going to be one of my main stressing points of the off season. Like, who do I lean into? Who do I lean away from? That's going to be one of my main things to look at as we start drafting again next year.
I'm really glad you brought this up as we wrap up. Well, I'm kind of tilted about it because now it's going to run laps around my head the rest of the night. And NBA is kicking off tonight. Shout out to anybody else that's drafted some NBA best ball teams or whatever, drafted some NBA battle royale teams. But I did not stress enough. I don't think anyone does. I mean, there's 1 or 2% of people probably out there that do this much better. Honestly, Felix does this better than we do. Now it led him to 90% Najee. So take that with a grain of salt, but
rip.
Does it? But doing this, implementing your thesis better than what other people do. And I don't think I've figured that out yet, right? You just get it. And part of it is, dude, it's a grind. You're drafting hundreds or thousands of teams for months and months. And you get into that lull in August. You're like, yep, got to get my 121st BBM team in. And, whatever. And Najee falls to the middle of the second. And instead of taking Tyreek Hill, you take Najee Harris because you're like, oh, I'll just get my Najee exposure when he falls 6 picks past ADP. Like, that fucking matters.
Right.
Like 6 picks past ADP in the second round. Like, who cares? It really doesn't matter. And so implementing my kind of exposure and portfolio strategy better, kind of like what we just talked about. Like, just give me those 5 more Diggs teams. Like, it's easy to say now because those guys aren't hitting, but it's also easy to say because that was the thesis before. I just showed you the rankings. You had just said Travis Kelce was my 6th overall player. Stephon Diggs was my 7th. Devontae Adams was my 8th. I was just taking all those guys over those other running backs. So why do I have Najee? Why do I have Eckler? Why do I have Mixon? Right? I shouldn't. If I stuck to my guns, and it wouldn't have changed my portfolio that much, and I'd be able to better live with myself, right? When the season ends, if Dalvin Cook is the guy, so be it. I'm happy to lose. I really don't give a shit.
Yeah.
But if I lose, and you'll never be able to tell this is the problem. If I lose because I didn't get those 5 extra, Diggs is the guy, right? I'm above market on Diggs and Kelce. One of them is the guy, right? Kelce scores 4 touchdowns in the finals. And I didn't get a Kelce team through because I drafted those extra 10 teams of these other running backs I didn't want. I'll never know, right? And you're like, and you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I was right about Kelce, but I didn't make any money from it. So that's definitely one of the biggest things I'm going to try to figure out next year. Because right? I have a stand on Henderson, like I said earlier. You have stands on, right? Both of us have stands on MVS. I took a stand on, etc. player. But figuring out, I think the first few rounds, how to best implement that is something I haven't figured out yet, and something I'm gonna sink my teeth into.
Yeah. Craig has a question, and I don't know how deep we want to get into this because we need to get going. But
yep.
So he basically says, I have another percentage question I've been contemplating too. How much do I want to follow you top streamers, and how much do I fade it? You guys provide such great info when I write on so many players, but when I'm right on Derrick Henry and advance those teams, I know I have leverage versus your 150 teams and followers. Yeah, you have leverage on us, but guess what? Derrick Henry still got drafted in the first round every single time, or at least the second. It's not like so like those guys, it's your leverage against us literally doesn't matter because we're just dead anyways, right? But for you advance more teams, so that's great. Like, good for you. And if you feel strongly about a player, it goes into feeling strongly about a player. If you feel strongly about a player, you're trying to get that player through with as many bullets as you possibly can. If your guy's Derrick Henry, I don't besmirch you that. I have no issue with Derrick Henry. I've never followed the trend of like hating Derrick Henry until this year specifically, but that's just because I have problems with the Titans offense as a whole this year. Mm-hmm. It's not, and that's not even specifically on.
He's older now. The Titans, it was a different situation than the last couple of years.
Yeah. And I think I had 8 to 10% Henry last year because he's a guy that can rip off a 40-point game, unlike any other running back in the league. And we were right until he got hurt. Like, you looked great on it, right? I had a Henry Eckler team that was absolutely manhandling everybody.
Smash.
Yeah, it might have been number 1 on the leaderboard as of like week 7 or 8, and then it got toasted. So like, yeah, I mean, you need to find the guys that you believe in and the thesis behind them. Now, you're not getting leverage because he's still getting drafted every single draft. The only time you're getting leverage with players are guys that you get that went undrafted 50% of the time or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so you can't look at it that specific way, in my opinion. You need to look at what you want your portfolio to be and what you want to try to get through to advance. If that makes sense.
What I would add is a guy we talked about earlier that I think is a better example isn't leverage, but a guy who has the requisite kind of wide band range of outcomes, upside, however you want to phrase it, that the community, not just that, right? The community, all the streamers, as Craig said, the community kind of pushes down a Josh Jacobs, where like if the community is wrong about Josh Jacobs, him in the 10th round is the best pick in fantasy, as he kind of has been for the last 2 weeks, basically.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry still had an ADP of 7 or whatever.
Yeah, this is a great point.
You're not gaining anything by taking a stand on Derrick Henry because the entire field is right there with you.
Yeah.
But Josh Jacobs, who maybe I don't want to say artificially, because there were reasons, right? I kind of outlined the reasons why I was low on Josh Jacobs, but they were all the same reasons that everyone was low on Josh Jacobs, and everyone in this community was thinking the same thing. When, right, it's the anti-LaVisca. Last year, everybody saw the LaVisca ceiling case last year, and so he gets steamed up because everybody's like, oh man, all these people that are creating content are talking about this upside case for this talented player who remains to be seen if he's talented. But, so he gets driven up. If you just fade that could be some kind of quasi leverage, because the market has taken a firm stand on one specific outcome for that player. Same thing happened with Josh Jacobs this year. The market said, look, it's a committee. They didn't exercise his 5th-year option. Zamir White's going to mix in there. Brandon Bolden's going to mix in there. Amir Abdullah made Sean Siegel's 0 RB list. That dude hasn't even touched the ball in a month. I've got as many touches as Amir Abdullah has in the NFL. And the whole field just said, nope, it's over for Josh Jacobs. But there was this was in the range. I don't know what percentage probability I would put on this outcome. It's low, but this was in the range. And so those are the situations I think I would be more willing to be like, let's fade kind of the streamer consensus.
Yeah, no, those are definitely the ones that I try to. Skyy Moore gets bumped up. Like, that was, not to, single out the ship chasing guys, but he got pushed up, and he was
because
getting
of
talked about.
Because of 3 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was because of them. I mean, so those are the ones where, if Leone has a guy, or, we have a guy that we like, you need to step back. You need to look and like, are they getting pushed up because of these players and because of these guys? And maybe you need to go the other way with it. Or maybe we're right and we're smart and we do things that are proper. Right. So I think that is going to do it for me tonight. Do you have anything else you wanted to hit on?
I don't think so. This was fun for everybody watching. A, appreciate you, but B, we're about to get into kind of a new rhythm for both the live shows and content that's coming out on this channel. So just be on the lookout for a little bit of a different flavor of what we're going to be doing. I'm extremely excited about kind of some small pivots that we're making. But obviously this show will be here every Tuesday at this time, and I'm feeling good. I'm excited, even though this show was like meant to trigger both of us. I think it was a lot of fun conversation. It was therapy. Yeah, exactly. We should have done it laying on got the couches or whatever, and laid down and done the show on the couch. Yeah, exactly. Gotham did, and now literally you can't see it, but one of my dogs is having an absolute then they're trying to wrestle. If you can see, you're probably starting to see them from behind me. Yeah. So it's perfect timing for us to get out of here, but we'll be back next week. Maybe we'll do, I think you mentioned this. We'll do some mid-season awards next week.
That. And I just want to say, only because it's October, I'm just going to self-promote real quick. We are doing, if you're into spooky stuff, tonight, 9:00, we're starting our big October. We've been doing a big October push, but tonight we are covering Salem, Massachusetts on Hometown Ghost Stories. That's live at 9:00 on YouTube. So if you want to do something spooky with your family or something, it's a fun show to watch. We're going to be covering what happened during the Salem witch trials, but also the ghosts, much like Will Fuller, that linger within Salem, Massachusetts. So come join us. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
So for myself, for Erik, we will see you soon. Peace.